this is just our lifestyle now. And so it's just part of our everyday. It's more than just about food for us with health and wellness. I know we talked a lot about food, but it's so much more than that.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocks podcast. I am back with the Parsons, Noah and Elizabeth Parsons, Purely Parsons, as most of you know them. And Rinella, of course, she's back with me. Abby, Rinella. I really want to drag it out and waste your time, but we don't have time for that. So we're just going to say Rinella again. We are so glad to be back. We're talking about the new year. We're in 2023, and we are talking about just renewing all the things in our lives. I mean, spiritually, homeschooling, our health. I mean, well, there are other parts of our life, right? Marriage, parenting, all the other, relationships, stuff like that. So there's lots of things to renew. But for the rest of today, we are going to talk about renewing our health, renewing our bodies, and, whether that's exercise or how we eat and all the things that make up us as humans. So we're going to talk about that today with the Parsons because they are very passionate about this. And I love the platform that God has given to them to be able to just share so much truth about what they've learned in the way of healthy living. But before we get back into that, I want to say thank you to our sponsor, BJU Press Homeschool. Every child has a unique individual learning style. BJU Press has video lessons with engaging teachers to lead your children through each of their academic subjects. These experienced teachers will present lesson content from multiple angles so your children can absorb information at a comfortable pace. Visit their website at bjupresshomeschool.com to see what courses are available for your students. So, Elizabeth and Noah, thank you for being back with us today. I want to give some really practical ways for our listeners and myself to get back into this healthy lifestyle. Because as we talked about, it's a new year. And so everybody's thinking about this right now. How can we very practically jump off into this? Someone who's maybe they've just fallen off the wagon, or maybe they've just never really taken their health seriously. What would you say to them? How do you get them started?
That's a really good question and a very loaded one. But I would say, the first thing would be don't try to do it all at once. Take it one thing at a time. Do what you can with what you have, where you are, and change things as you go. As something runs out, figure out a way that you can replace that with something that is going to be better for your health. Another thing I would say is start reading ingredients in your food. If you turn the label over and there's ingredients on that label that you can't pronounce and you don't know what they are, then that means that it was not intended to go into our bodies. So if you really start reading ingredient labels, that can really, really help clean up your diet. And then kind of piggybacking off of that, something that Noah had mentioned is learn how to cook. Maybe once a month, eat out, probably less than that. I can't remember the last time we ate out. We eat 3 meals a day at home. We cook all of our meals. From scratch. Yeah. There's literally no better way not no better way, but it is going to be a very, you're going to make strides in health if you learn how to cook quality whole foods. And it's not hard. Anyone can learn how to cook. You don't have to have this culinary background. And cooking whole foods can be very, very easy and convenient even. So I would say those 3 things to start.
I would say as I'm listening to you, I really believe, that homeschooling really lends itself to making these things happen. Many homeschool families are on a single income. And so cooking at home is a practical way that we can make things more affordable anyway, right? And a lot of us are doing that anyway because we have the time, because we're at home. I also think, and I want to ask you, but I really do believe just homeschooling in general. It opened my eyes. The other day I drove my son, who's 12. We drove by what is the local middle school, and I don't know if he'd ever seen it. And I'm like, that's where you would be. And he looked at it and he's like, they're inside all day. And I'm like, they are. And he's like all day? And I'm like, they are. And I mean, this is a boy that's outside 90% of the time. And he said to me, he goes, Mom, I would die. And I was like, they are, honey. Like their physical body. I mean, they are.
When we have autonomy over our families and our kids and the flexibility to do whatever, we want and to rebalance our lives, it lends itself so beautifully to being able to do that, to teach our kids why we value the things that we do and get them involved. Sayla knows how to cook. She cooks pretty good breakfast. She knows how to make eggs and a lot of different things. And, she knows the value. Sometimes it's embarrassing, honestly, of clean ingredients. We'll go somewhere and she'll ask, she's like, is this organic? Like, Sayla, don't ask them. It doesn't have to be organic when we're visiting. Yeah. So,
but she does that from a good place because she knows, because we've taught her why we eat the way that we eat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, for the mom who maybe she's like, okay, organic. Yeah, maybe I keep seeing organic stuff in the store. I don't grow my own food. Okay. Talk to the city girl. Talk to the
Yvette.
Talk to me, who's, a city girl through and through. We've talked about this before. In my fantasies, I want to be a country girl, and I'm just not. I'm a city girl. But I, at least for myself, we've done so many podcasts on food and cooking and things like that, in the past 5 years. And I still struggle with it because it seems overwhelming to me. And you're saying it doesn't need to be that difficult. So simplify this for me, because I'm the one who I'm like, okay, I'm looking at my grocery list, my Walmart pickup grocery list, and I'm looking at a menu and I'm trying to just figure out, like, what do I make that's healthy and good for my family and nourishing to them and is going to give them all of the things that they need. And it completely overwhelms me, to be super honest with you. It just does. I don't like to be in the kitchen. I don't like menu planning. I don't like meal prep. My girls are much better at it than I am, but I really want to teach this to them. And I'm getting better at it. I have gotten much better at being in the kitchen and cooking and meal planning, but it's still, there's nothing that overwhelms me more than having to figure out healthy meals for my family. So how do you simplify it? How do you make this easy for yourself and for your family that you can pass this on to your kids?
I think that you're not alone in that. People tend to get very overwhelmed when you say eat whole foods, and eat clean. There's this like stigma.
Processed food.
Yeah. But honestly, most of our meals look like a protein, a vegetable, and a starch. Like that's literally, cook up some ground beef, season it well, learn how to roast vegetables in the oven, and they're delicious. And it really doesn't have to be that complicated. And
because the crazy thing is like really good food.
That's what I was going to say. The
like
quality.
If you source, good ingredients, it tastes amazing because that's the way that God designed it, obviously. So, and it takes time for, our taste buds to readjust for sure. But salt, salt is amazing. That's when she says season it well, she doesn't mean like add like,
salt and pepper and garlic.
Salt and pepper and garlic. And don't be afraid to like transition into that slowly. I think you have to have a passion for it. It has to be important. Like we're going to be weird to probably 90% plus of your audience because, we value eating clean, but we don't have health insurance. And that's a choice. Like we're not advocating that everybody does that. Sure. But for us, we say, we don't trust in the medical system. We trust in God. And we would rather invest all the money that we would be spending in a healthcare plan into leveling up the food quality, into getting, pastured beef, having our own chickens in our backyard because we've got an acre or two that we can use, cutting out the processed foods, getting some organic olive oil or even just olive oil, cutting out those refined oils and leveling up the oils and leveling up the meats. It's all about being able to, where you can, cut out the bad and add something that's better. Something that's better is just really the food in the state that God designed it. And it really does work out that way. That's the crazy thing. It's if the food has been changed in some way to make it cheaper to produce, it's just not the same food. I mean, it's just sadly not. And it's not a snobbery thing as much as it is we respect God's original design, and we benefited from God's original design.
When people get overwhelmed when they talk to us about this a lot, you know, like reading the ingredients overwhelms people. And we just often say, like, this is as simple as it is, eat as close to as God created it as possible, right? If it is as close to what you would walk out in nature and see, then that's the best it can be. If it's a meat that you're going to see on a mountainside, that's your best meat. If it's a plant that you're going to see in a garden out your window, that's the best it can be. And then you don't have to get bogged down by all the words and the ingredients. Just, do you see that in nature? Right. Then don't eat it, you know? And to touch on what you guys said, when we do feed our bodies the way that God designed, it's not like you have to choose the doctor or the food. When you eat the way that God designed, you naturally aren't going to be sick because you're feeding your body the way God designed, and your body is intended to heal the way that it designed. So it all just works. I mean, we all know that God created everything to work together.
There's a quote that I love, and I don't know who I got this from, but it's, the less you spend on food, the more you'll spend on healthcare, which is kind of what Noah was talking about, in that we choose to invest that in not just food, but a lot of our budget does go to our food. And, you know, in turn, I don't remember the last time we needed to go take our kids to the doctor.
Yeah. Good stuff. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. We want to thank all of our sponsors for making this show possible: BJU Press Homeschool, CTC Math, Apologia, and IEW. Without them, we wouldn't be able to do this. Visit the show notes for links to these great companies and thank them for supporting the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. We are back with the Parsons. I want to ask, we have a few more minutes left, and since this is a homeschool podcast, and of course we're talking about raising our kids and homeschooling them, and we've talked about leaving a legacy for our kids and what that looks like. You are so intentional about that, and I love that. How do you, in thinking about the legacy that you want to leave for your kids, not just spiritually, but physically as well, how do you incorporate them into the decisions that you make as a family when it comes to health and wellness? Because you really do. I mean, we have such a beautiful opportunity in homeschooling our kids to involve them in these decisions that we make. So how do you do that with your kids?
I think it's important to remember, ultimately, these children are given to us by the Lord to nurture and to steward, and they are blessings, and we should be careful to the things that we're teaching them and the values that we're instilling in them. And for us, this is, as we had talked before, this is just our lifestyle now. And so it's just part of our everyday. It's more than just about food for us with health and wellness. I know we talked a lot about food, but it's so much more than that. It's centered around every part of our life. And so we're including our children in not decisions that we make. Like, the decisions that we make are between Noah and I, and he's the head of our home, and we are one, but we include our children in the way of, we're explaining to them why we do the things that we do. So, even just down to like the cleaning products that we use, like being able to say, like, this is why we use this, and this is why we don't use these. Like, this is how these ingredients affect your body. But also pointing out to them, because we don't live in a bubble, right? And so our children go, for instance, soccer and soccer snacks. There's a balance there of all of the things that parents want to give kids for their soccer snacks. And we have to kind of tell our children, like, okay, you can have some of that, but you're not going to have this. And then also listen to your body. How do you feel after you ate those 3 Oreos or whatever it is, because oftentimes they're not feeling the greatest. And so being able to point that out, saying, like, look how that made your tummy feel. Like, that doesn't feel great, does it? And so just kind of like not creating a shame around the way other people choose to live. It's, we do things because we're convicted in that way to do them, and it's important to us, and we see the value in that, and we see the reward in that. So there's no shame in the way that other people live. There's no judgment, but also instilling in our kids, like, this is why we do it. And we do it because we want to honor the bodies that the Lord has given us. Our bodies are our temple, and this is what we believe to be the best for us. And so I think just creating an understanding around that, and being able to include them in the small parts of our homestead journey. Like, our dog just had puppies, and like them being able to care for something other than themselves, and seeing our chickens go from chicks to hens that are laying eggs, and having them being able to go out and get an egg from the backyard and crack it in the pan like 2 minutes after the chicken laid it. Like, that's amazing. That's amazing for our kids to be able to see. And then also, like, seeing death, and that's a part of homestead life too. And I think our kids have like an emotional maturity that a lot of kids these days are kind of sheltered from. People try and say that homeschool kids are like not socialized, they're sheltered. And to some extent, like, yeah, we shelter our kids for intentional purposes because we don't want a lot of the world's influences to get to our children. But like, it could not be farther from the truth that homeschool kids are sheltered and unsocialized.
Yeah.
Our kids see so much more than they would if they were inside of a building for 40 hours a week.
That's so good. And I really like your approach in that you're saying this is the conviction God has given us in our family, because we talk about that a lot with our kids, and we failed when they were little because we were like, this is right, that's wrong. Like, this is eating that way is wrong, or living that way, and like it says in Romans, like, we're not going to judge the whole eating meat versus not eating meat. It talks about in the word, and not passing judgment on someone else that doesn't live that lifestyle, but more educating people, and also just telling your kids, this is the decision we've made for you because God has put us over you to take care of you the way that we feel is best, rather than casting judgment on those that live differently, and just honoring their journey. And I like your approach to that, and helping your kids have that balance, because they are going to go out in the world. And if this is their cross to die on, then they might not be heard, in the bigger issues. So I really like that balance. And I think that that's a biblical balance. I see too many of the generation we get in this mommy wars, right? Like, I would never with my kid. And so it's just beautiful how you guys have that real balance with your kids, and you're giving them the why. Why we talk a lot on this podcast about knowing the why that we do what we do, and you're giving them the why that we're doing this. And that's awesome.
Abby, you talked about educating people in the way of, healthy living. And so Elizabeth and Noah, that is why we brought you on this week, because you are so good at that. And I mean, we've barely just touched on this, but your Instagram is full of education and wisdom that you guys share. And I love that it's so cool, because sometimes you think, like, in order to get good stuff, you have to pay for it, right? Instagram is a way that you can actually get good information without having to pay for it, though. Don't park yourself on it for hours a day and ignore your kids, because that can become a thing too. And that can be a terrible habit to have. But you have so much good information on there. And I love that you are so transparent and so open with just sharing the things that God has taught you. And it's not just on Instagram, but your blog as well. I mean, you've got tons of great information on there as well. And so for those listening, I know, like I said, we've just barely touched on this, but go visit the Parsons, visit their website, follow them on Instagram, and just feed yourself with these bits of information that they're both just pouring out on a consistent basis. And the thing that I love about you guys most of all is that, just like we try to do here with the podcast, you're always pointing people back to their creator.
Yep.
And praise God for that, because that's what it's all about is Jesus. And so thank you for being with us this week. It has been truly a privilege and an honor to have you on the podcast with us. Tell us one more time, for those who may have missed it, the first two episodes, where people can find out more about you.
We are on Instagram at Purely Parsons, and you can visit our website, purelyparsons.com. There is lots of resources over there, from, like you said, my blog, but I've got multiple different pages. I have health resources, and we have a little shop over there. So make sure you visit there as well.
Yep, sounds great. We will put those links in the show notes. Thank you guys so much for joining us this week. We love you. We are praying for you.
Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. Happy
New Year.
2023. Oh, man. Start this new year off strong. And if you've not yet done it today, go spend time with the Lord, even if that means your kids are crawling all over you and you're reading out loud the Word of God to them, and listen to some worship music, put on some hymns, and just feed your soul with goodness and with God's truth and God's love. So we love you guys. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye.
Education is discipleship, and this is something I didn't understand until I was probably 3 years into homeschooling. The Bible teaches us in Luke 6:40 that when a student is fully trained, he will be like his teacher. And as we look around the culture right now, I think it begs the question, who is teaching our children? Who is teaching our children, and what are they teaching our children? And to me, the primary benefit of having my children home with me is I am able to impart my worldview to my children.